Right now at 5 a.m., a Fox News alert. Rod Rosenstein is leaving the Justice Department within a matter of weeks, but insists it has nothing to do with the fallout from Andy McCabe's explosive accusations.
All right, so who will replace Rosenstein? We're live in Washington with more on that. Plus, thousands of liberal demonstrators spent President's Day protesting the Trump administration's national emergency as Democrats in power are looking to the Ninth Circuit Court instead.
Will their latest legal battle be enough to block the White House border policy? And here's a question. How many bath towels do you have at home?
Who cares? The brand new debate.
Social media
dividing
cares.
social media this morning. Fox and Friends First continues right now.
What?
It's not a bad song.
No, it's not. It's a good song.
Steve Winwood.
Good way to
We
start.
played
a
Higher
Tuesday.
Love on this network before, too. We're big Steve Winwood people around here.
Are we?
We are now. You're watching Fox and Friends First on this Tuesday morning. I'm Rob Schmidt.
And I'm Jillian Muley. As always, thank you for starting your day with us. Let's get right to this Fox News alert. Rod Rosenstein expected to step down as Deputy Attorney General next month. His departure coming after former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe revealed an inside job to attempt to remove the president from office.
Griff Jenkins is live in Washington with the latest on all this. Hey, Griff.
Hey, Rob and Jillian, good morning. Yeah, we've known and reported that Rosenstein intended to step down around the time a new attorney general took office. But now we have a better timeline. It's going to be mid-March, and confirmation that Barr will replace Rosenstein with that man right there, Jeffrey Rosen, currently serving as Deputy Secretary of Transportation. Now, Rosen previously served as General Counsel and Senior Policy Advisor for the White House Office of Management and Budget under President George W. Bush. And before that, he was General Counsel at the Department of Transportation from 2003 to 2006. Now, this change comes amid the firestorm created by former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, who believes he was fired for opening an investigation into President Trump, claims Rosenstein considered using the 25th Amendment to remove the president, and Rosenstein was willing to wear a wire. The president tweeting in response to this: the biggest abuse of power and corruption scandal in our history, and it's much worse than we thought. Andrew McCabe, FBI, admitted to plotting a coup, government overthrow, when he was serving in the FBI before he was fired for lying and leaking treason. Well, now Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Lindsey Graham wants to know more.
It's one of the most significant moments in American history, if it's true. So what I'll do, oversight is part of my job. We do have checks and balances, so the Congress will watch those who watch us. I'll try to find out who was in these meetings and talk to all of them and figure out who's lying, because somebody's lying.
No timeline on when those hearings might begin, but an official announcement of the pick of Jeffrey Rosen could come as early as this week. Rob, Jillian.
All right, Griff, thank you very much.
All right, former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe and Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein may be at this point accused of at least thinking about trying to pull a political coup against the president. But could their backfired intentions against the president expose potentially a deep state within the FBI?
According to former Deputy Assistant Director of FBI Counterterror, Terry Turchi, finding out who orchestrated these plans could reveal those operatives.
As we have a political party, the Democratic Party, turning harder and harder left, which in itself is a major national security risk. We also do not know exactly, to this day, exactly what happened in the FBI, whether there still exists within the FBI these kinds of issues, perhaps people appointed by McCabe before he left. And we need to get to the bottom of all these things that are still out there in the universe and all these loose ends. People need to know who orchestrated all this, because it is absolutely just unbelievable that there is not somebody behind all of this that pulled it together and compromised the FBI. And we're not even getting into the fact we could have had certainly we could have had anything from bribes to greed to ego.
Absolutely.
All of these things are factors.
Senator Lindsey Graham now planning to launch a hearing about comments made between McCabe and Rosenstein over invoking the 25th Amendment, and see who is telling the truth there.
California California leading a multi-state lawsuit against President Trump's emergency declaration. 16 Democratic attorneys general taking the legal battle to the liberal Ninth Circuit Court, claiming the action is unconstitutional. This after the president declared a national emergency, allowing him to move about $6 billion in military funds to build a southern border wall. The states say moving money will hurt their economies. President Trump addresses the crisis in Venezuela, warning against the dangers of socialism.
Years of socialist rule have brought this once thriving nation to the brink of ruin. This will never happen to us.
Debbie D'Souza, who was born in Venezuela, joined us earlier and shared her thoughts on the president's speech in Miami.
President Trump was correct. Socialism is the opposite of freedom and democracy. The only people that benefit are the government elite.
President Trump also slammed disputed Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro for blocking humanitarian supplies from entering the country.
All right, the two brothers question the alleged attack on Empire actor Jussie Smollett are speaking out. In a joint statement, these two say, quote, "We are not racist, we are not homophobic, we are not anti-Trump. We were born and raised in Chicago and are American citizens." Chicago police once considered the brothers persons of interest, but they were released without charges. Smollett claims that he was attacked by men shouting MAGA country and racist and homophobic slurs in downtown Chicago. His attorneys are denying reports and a lot of evidence now that this was all just a hoax. Police want to question the actor again, and he's trying to avoid it at this point. The fiancé of a missing Colorado mom heads to court today. Prosecutors will try to prove that there is enough evidence to put Patrick Frazee on trial. He is charged in the murder of Kelsey Barrett, who disappeared on Thanksgiving Day. And at this point, she and her body both have never been found. Barrett's parents claim Frazee claimed Kelsey over custody dispute surrounding the couple's one-year-old daughter.
No school today for more than 250,000 kids in West Virginia as teachers hit the picket lines just hours from now. They're upset about a new education bill that would use public money to fund charter schools and private school vouchers. The same teachers went on strike for 13 days last year, which triggered a series of teacher strikes across the country.
All right, did you get a chance to look up last night? A super snow moon. Yeah, me neither. Super snow moon lighting up the night sky. The brightest, well, look at that. That is beautiful. And largest full moon of the year. It'll officially reach its peak very early this morning when it is closest to the Earth, but it'll still be visible tonight. If you miss it overnight, if it's clear where you live, you're going to get another chance tonight. The third and final supermoon of the year is next month. It's cool.
I feel like there's so many names for these moons, like the super blood, blah, 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 moon, wolf. Janice, why do we keep adding more names?
That's a good question. Wolf, I believe, is because it comes in January. I'll have to Google this one. But you're right. There's a lot of them. It's kind of almost like an optical illusion, but it is very pretty when you look up in the sky.
It is.
You know what? It's cold outside.
Yes, it is.
And it feels cold because we've got a wind chill in a lot of areas. So it feels like minus 22 in Fargo. I know minus 2 in Sioux City. And it feels like 13 in New York City. So it's cool for much of the country. Past 24 hours, we're dealing with the potential for some snow across the Rockies. But our next big system is starting to develop in the Gulf of Mexico. And that is what is going to bring us a mixture of freezing rain, sleet, ice, snow, you name it, as it goes across the Ohio River Valley up towards the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast Wednesday into Thursday. So taking a look at it, we're going to see some significant snow across the upper Midwest and the Great Lakes, and then a mixture of yuck for parts of the Northeast and the mid-Atlantic. So forecast precipitation, it's the ice again I'm concerned with. We're also going to talk about the potential for heavy rainfall across the Mid-South, the Deep South, and then that icy mix where we could see the potential for significant ice on the roadways and the power lines across portions of the Appalachians, interior mid-Atlantic region. So those areas need to really pay close attention because that's when it's going to get tricky and we're going to have travel delays. I know. When is it coming? When's spring coming?
It's coming soon.
It is. It just sometimes feels a little bit longer than That darn groundhog.
This is when it really gets bad, because it's like you're so close.
You're
and you've
there.
had it for so long.
And like the groundhog says, early spring doesn't mean instant spring.
True.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
That's all I got.
That groundhog has very little credibility at this point. Janice, thank you so much.
Thank you. It is 10 minutes after the hour. The crisis in Venezuela front and center as President Trump delivers a blunt warning. So, why should you care? National security consultant Rebecca Heinrichs joins us live to explain how the mess there impacts every one of us.
You know what they do? Call me an anti-Semite. Stop it. I'm anti-termite.
And you've heard some of the comments, anti-Semitic rants from Louis Farrakhan. Now he's defending freshman Congresswoman Ilhan Omar for her own remarks. We'll have that coming up. Okay, the second summit between President Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un set for next week in Vietnam.
There are now serious talks about a potential liaison office in North Korea. So what could that mean for our relationship? Here to weigh in is national security consultant and senior fellow at the Hudson Institute, Rebecca Heinrichs. Thank you for your time this morning. Intriguing to hear about this potential liaison office. What do you make of it?
Well, it's a little bit too soon to get overly excited about it. This was something that the United States tried to do back in 1994, and then the North Koreans shut everything down and changed their minds. So, as all things, when it comes to trying to make progress with the North Koreans, take everything that comes out of the news with a grain of salt, because lots of things can crumble right at the last minute. But what the Trump administration is clearly trying to do is sustain the calming of relations between the United States and North Korea. We were just at Fire and Fury, where President Trump and Kim Jong-un were exchanging this very heated rhetoric just a couple of years ago. Things are calmed down. But remember, the North Koreans still promised to denuclearize, and we haven't seen any concrete steps in that direction since the Singapore summit. So President Trump really needs to secure some deliverables, some actual things in writing that the North Koreans are going to do to make progress and to dismantle their nuclear missile program.
Yeah, it's a slow progress, but we have to remember how ugly it was getting under the last years of Obama. I mean, it was getting really close. If we look at a poll here, a Fox News poll, it shows that the major threat, what people think is a major threat to our national security, you can still see more than half of people say North Korea is there on the list, because it wasn't that long ago that it was looking really bad and they were developing these weapons. But again, to be too optimistic, I mean, what are the chances that this country actually stops developing nuclear weapons at the end of the day?
Well, remember, the capability to actually inflict harm against the United States. They still have nuclear ICBMs that can target the United States. None of that has changed. So even at first, in order for the North Koreans to actually do something concrete, allowing inspectors into the country, dismantling particular missile development sites, we can't do that. We need to see the North Koreans actually make the progress themselves first before we even consider relieving sanctions.
Rebecca, let's talk about what's going on in Venezuela right now. And the president addressed this in Miami. Let's take a listen to that and get your reaction on the back end.
You must not follow Maduro's orders to block humanitarian aid. I ask every member of the Maduro regime, end this nightmare of poverty, hunger, and death for your people. Let your people go. Set your country free.
Rebecca, why should everybody in our country care what's going on there?
Well, first of all, this was one of the president's most powerful moments, I think, as commander-in-chief. He really painted this strong picture that we have the opportunity to get socialism out of the Western Hemisphere, not only in our lifetime, but in the next couple of years, as the United States continues to pressure these regimes. It's worrisome because you have Democratic members of Congress who are promoting socialist ideals. And we have a cautionary tale happening right now in Venezuela, where socialism has crushed that economy in just a couple of decades. Families are starving. They don't have the medicine they need. They're leaving their country by the millions in the last couple of years. A couple 100,000 Venezuelans have settled into the United States looking for freedom and prosperity and just reprieve from their own dictatorship. And so this was one of the president's powerful moments to show that contrast between what the United United States has now in a direction that we certainly do not want to head down that road.
Yeah, this is gold for him politically, going up against potentially socialist policies in 2020. The president said yesterday socialism is rooted in ignorance of history and human nature. One of the big quotes from the speech. Thank you so much, Rebecca. We appreciate your time.
Thanks.
It is 18 minutes after the hour. She called for attacks on Americans before moving to Syria to become an ISIS bride. Now, that American woman is pleading to come home. Should she be allowed?
What this president is doing to this country is unforgivable.
The national emergency is Trump.
I think we should have an open border.
An open border.
Yeah. I mean, we don't need a wall.
And I went out yesterday, froze my butt off, and talked to activists as they protested President Trump and his national emergency on President's Day. We're going to hear some of that coming up next.
You had a puffy coat.
Still cold.
Within the
Good morning to you. Welcome back. Nation of Islam leader Louis Farrakhan is defending Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. Farrakhan says Omar does not need to apologize for accusing a lobbying group of paying members of Congress to support Israel.
Sweetheart, don't do that. But you have nothing to apologize for. You were sent there by the people to shake up that corrupt house. Shake it up.
Farrakhan has a history of making anti-Semitic comments. President Trump has suggested Congresswoman Omar should resign.
Former 2016 Democratic presidential candidate has taken aim at President Trump's emergency declaration. Hillary Clinton questioning the president's effort to secure the border. The former Secretary of State tweeting, quote, the real national emergencies, relentless gun violence, children separated from their families at the border, climate change, and Americans dying for lack of health care.
President's Day saw thousands of people protest nationwide against President Trump and his national emergency over the border wall.
Yeah, this was one of more than 275 protests across the country. You can see the video right here. As several states, I think 16 at this point, and a number of organizations have all filed lawsuits against the president's declaration, most of that going to the Ninth Circuit. I went to Union Square Park late yesterday afternoon to talk to some of these activists, see what they had to say.
I'm here because I'm a progressive person.
What this president is doing to this country is unforgivable.
Sick of Trump, sick of the lies, sick of the destruction of democracy that's been happening in the last 2 years.
I think the president presents a legitimate threat. I mean, he's trying to bypass the will of Congress. If this isn't fascism, I don't know what is.
Is he anti-immigration or is he anti-illegal immigration?
Oh, he's anti-non-white immigration is what I think.
The latest, the National Emergency Declaration.
Yeah.
What do you make of it?
Ha, ha, and ha. There isn't a national emergency on our border.
There's no crisis there. I mean, there's a crisis on the planet if you want to talk about climate change.
The national emergency is Trump.
What should our southern border with Mexico look like?
I mean, I think that any country needs to have secure borders, needs to have safe borders, and needs to treat people with compassion and dignity.
So you believe in some kind of barrier, but not a wall from sea to sea all the way across?
I believe that there are smart ways to control immigration in this country.
Do you think that we need...
I've never denied that we don't need like a safe border.
Right.
You know, like we need a safe border, but we have a problem, and building a massive wall is not really going to fix anything.
Do you think there should be any border at all between countries?
I don't know. I thought a great deal about it, and I'm not sure there should be a border.
I think we should have an open border.
An open border.
Yeah. I mean, we don't need a wall. To me, that's like $5 billion that could be spent on things that could make much more substantive change.
So he was one of a few people, there weren't that many actually, that were calling for open borders. He was also calling for free health care, all the free things that you're hearing from the far left right now. I asked him about the obvious expense of that. He didn't have much of an answer to that. But there were a lot of people there. There were a lot of moderate Democrats in that crowd, which is an interesting point to be made right now. I don't know what that says about the president at this point, but when you have protests where moderates are showing up,
right.
It definitely shows that he has crossed some sort of a line that the left has. So
all right,
that's what we made of it. Yeah.
Interesting.
26 minutes after the hour now, reports that Bernie Sanders is announcing a presidential run met with
all right, the
silence
Army is hoping
from
this
Democrats.
video will attract new...
Getting a lot of attention. His socialist views, though, are gaining popularity among 2020 hopefuls.
So why are Democrats embracing Bernie's policies but leaving him behind? Our political panel is on deck to debate that coming up next. you are having a good Tuesday so far. Welcome back, and a look at our top headlines this morning. Rod Rosenstein is expected to step down as Deputy Attorney General next month. The departure comes after a bombshell admission from former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe about an inside job to remove President Trump from office. Deputy Secretary of Transportation Jeffrey Rosen is expected to replace him. California leads a multi-state lawsuit against President Trump's emergency declaration. 16 Democratic attorney generals taking the legal battle to the liberal Ninth Circuit Court. They say the president moving money to build a border wall will hurt their economies. And the big story everyone's been following, the brothers questioned in the alleged attack on Empire actor Jussie Smollett are speaking out. In a joint statement, the men say they are not racist, homophobic, or anti-Trump. They claim Smollett paid them to attack him. The actor's lawyers deny it was a hoax. Rob.
Some more headlines here. A second woman accusing Virginia's lieutenant governor of sexual assault makes a call for open hearings. Justin Fairfax's alleged victim says that she is frustrated by his calls for an FBI probe instead of public meetings. Meredith Watson, writing in the Washington Post, quotes, "Such investigations are secret proceedings out of the public eye, leaving victims vulnerable to selective leaks and smears." Her lawyers have told Virginia lawmakers that she is willing to testify. First responders saved 16 people stranded on an amusement park ride overnight. Passengers, including children and a baby, left hanging in gondolas over water in San Diego. It took hours to save them one by one, lowering them onto rescue boats using harnesses. The SeaWorld ride came to a sudden stop after a strong gust of wind tripped a circuit breaker. The ride is going to be inspected before it finally reopens. Police warning parents of a dangerous game that's making a comeback on social media. Have you heard about this? The 48-hour challenge encourages teenagers to go missing for 2 days. The goal is to get attention, to get their picture circulating online. It's ridiculous. For each like or share their photo receives, they earn a point in this game. Authorities say the game is not only scaring parents, but it's a tremendous waste of police resources. Unbelievable. All right, Senator Elizabeth Warren is expected to unveil her universal child care plan today. The $70 billion per year program would be paid for with a wealth tax that she's proposing on the country's top earners. Warren's plan would reportedly cap a family's child care spending at 7% of their income. The government pays the rest. Some families would get totally free child care. Jillian, over to you.
Bernie Sanders is rumored to be announcing another presidential run, but those reports have been met with pretty much radio silence from the left. So why are they embracing Sanders' policies but not him? Joining me now to debate that is former Bernie Sanders national staffer Tezlyn Figaro and senior advisor to George P. Bush, Ash Wright. Thank you both for joining us. I guess, Tezlyn, I'll begin with you. What do you make of the fact that, I mean, the socialist policies right now are ramping up, but not many seem too excited about Bernie Sanders at this point?
Of course. I mean, they're not excited because he's not a Democrat, number one. Number two, you know, he disrupted the system, you know, completely shook it up in 2016. 2020 will be much worse than 2016, which is, you know, he spent a lot of time making friends and, you know, making a nice, I guess, with Hillary Clinton. And unfortunately, that's not going to favor him this time. The Democrat establishment will make sure that Bernie Sanders doesn't have a chance in this 2020 election. But yeah, they all became progressives, and now all of a sudden everybody's on board with every Bernie Sanders policy, but unfortunately they'll just leave them hanging out to dry.
Well, let's take a look at some of these policies. That includes Medicare for all, that includes free college tuition and higher taxes for the wealthy. Ash, what do you say?
Well, look, I think Bernie Sanders actually did run a very good campaign against Hillary Clinton in 2016. He won 19 states. He took a very significant portion of the popular vote. Hillary Clinton, though, in turn won 85% of all of the superdelegates, which essentially gave her the nomination. I think what the Democrat Party is looking for here is they want Bernie Sanders' energy, his policies, but they want a Beto O'Rourke or someone that's younger than Donald Trump. And Bernie Sanders is one of the few candidates seeking the Democrat nomination that would actually be older than Donald Trump. And so they're looking for someone else to champion these policies. And that's essentially what's going on in the inside, in-depth part of the Democratic Party.
So, Tezlyn, do you know who would be that person that Ash just described?
Well, I mean, I kind of disagree with him a little bit. You know, by working on the campaign, it doesn't matter if Bernie Sanders was 23, 35 or 45. They don't want Bernie Sanders, bottom line. They want a Democrat that is actually a Democrat, that is not an independent, that did not go against the establishment, period, point blank. So, you know, I don't know if these candidates will be able to pull it off or not. We're going to have a chance to see what their record is. Most of these candidates are moderate. They're not progressives. You know, even myself, I'm not a socialist. I lean moderate. So a lot of these folks are going to have to really determine who they are, and just running around saying you're progressive is just not going to do it. So it has nothing to do with his age. It's just Bernie Sanders, period. They don't like him in the discussion.
And we got a nod there from Ash. So with that parting nod, let's go ahead to this next topic here for a second. And let's talk about what's, geez, a topic of conversation in New York and across the country, really, because it's the failed Amazon deal. Before we get into this conversation, let's go ahead and hear from both Bill de Blasio and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
If we're willing to give away $3 billion for this deal, we could invest those $3 billion in our district ourselves if we wanted to.
That $3 billion would go back in tax incentives was only after we were getting the jobs and getting the revenue.
Ash, I mean, some people say this is a gift to Republicans. I mean, what's going on with the Democrats here?
Yeah, absolutely. It is a gift to the Republicans heading into 2020. I mean, it's very difficult for a voter to try to determine what it means about tax breaks and, you know, what it means for raising taxes and lowering taxes out of Washington, D.C. But this is a clear divide between liberal economic policies and conservative economic policies. And so I think the struggle here for Democrats is as Bezos, steps back in Amazon and they try to choose a new state. If they choose a state that's a swing state that has a Republican governor like Florida or Ohio, Tennessee, et cetera, I mean, this will draw a clear line and be a clear talking point for not only the president, but for a swing state in 2020. And I think it's a real problem coming up for Democrats.
Teslin, final word. We have about 10 seconds left.
I mean, absolutely. The mayor is trying to, once again, position himself as a progressive when he is a moderate. He is pro-business. That's what separated him between him and Cynthia Nixon. And so he's absolutely right. Democrats are off message. They're not sure if they want to be progressive, moderate, and just kind of throwing things out there and seeing if it sticks.
Well, I think everyone agrees that Democrats have to get on message altogether if it's going to work out. So we will certainly see. Teslin and Ash, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
It is 37 minutes after the hour. She urged people to drive trucks into crowds on Veterans Day. Now this ISIS bride from Alabama is asking for forgiveness.
I realized that I made a big mistake, and I know I ruined my future and my son's future, and I'm deeply, deeply regretting.
Don Bramer is a former intelligence officer and Iraq veteran. He joins us live to remind us she is not the victim. Stay right there.
From our sister network, Fox Business, here with a new report out. Hey, Tracy.
Good morning. Yes, the FAA is currently investigating Southwest Airlines. According to the Wall Street Journal, some Southwest employees gave pilots the wrong information in terms of how heavy bags were, and then pilots put that information into the planes. So in some cases, there were discrepancies, differences of about 1,000 pounds. An incorrect weight on an aircraft can really cause some problems. Some adjustments need to be made when it comes to takeoff speeds, maneuverability, landing gear, all of that. So Southwest Airlines says it is cooperating with the FAA in this investigation. The FAA says that there have been no accidents linked to these discrepancies, but still very scary to think about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tracy, thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right. An Alabama woman turned ISIS bride wants to come home following what she calls a traumatic experience.
And now says she's a changed woman.
I realized that I made a big mistake, and I know I ruined my future and my son's future, and I'm deeply, deeply regretting.
Here to discuss why she shouldn't be allowed back in the U.S. is former intelligence officer and Iraq veteran Don Bramer. Thank you for your time this morning. I mean, Don, it seems insane that anyone would think that she should come back here.
Well, Martin Luther King said it best, that we should always forgive. But what I'm going to look at here is the U.S. Code says that if you adhere towards the enemy, you align with the enemy, you're a treasonist. And, at 19, she made an adult decision to leave school, use her tuition money, and go join ISIS.
I mean, I don't see a lot of sympathy coming out. Like you said, she was technically an adult here. If she did come back, would they... I mean, what would happen? Would they throw her in prison? What happens if she's allowed to come back to this country?
Well, there's a few ways to look at it. I mean, being from Alabama, the folks at Fort Rucker, the folks from the 36 ID and the Alabama National Guard, would they want her as her neighbor after losing friends and family members overseas? Yeah. I'd have to say no. But look at exactly what happened in the case of John Walker Lindh. If you remember, the American Taliban. You know, he's still against their own country and their neighbors. But also the men and women of this